I'm Cole Haddon, and this is 5 a.m. Real Talk, a 5 a.m. Story Talk plog. Welcome back, Story Talkers. Christmas is almost upon us, so I'm going to try not to take up too much of your time here. I don't want to assume that everyone listening to this podcast lives somewhere where Christmas is recognized or, even relevant, but most of you probably do. And even if you don't celebrate the holiday itself, I'm sure you enjoy the time off to spend with your family and friends, which is what I'll be doing. 3 days of nonstop food, presents, and general merriment, as you might say. I'm heading into this holiday with mixed emotions, though. The good news is I turned in this pilot script I'd been commissioned to write, a UK-Australian co-production I'm really excited about. You've heard me talk about it over the past couple of months as I wrestled it into shape. Well, it's in, and I feel very good about it. It's one hell of a vibe, as we would say here in Australia. Now comes the terrifying stretch for all screenwriters, when you wait to hear what your producers think of your work, and for the inevitable notes, of course. I won't have to worry about that until sometime in January, though. I'm going to fill in the time between now and then working on some other writing projects I've been developing, which I'm excited about. Time to scratch a few other creative itches now. But my little pilot script achievement aside, the world's still a mess, and my heart it's broken right now. More so than usual when it comes to the state of everything. I live in Australia, as most of you know by now. I'm half American, but the other half of me is an Aussie, and it's been a horrible week or so for the country. But also in the end, maybe a beautiful one too, given how so many have responded to the terror attack in Bondi Beach with calls for unity and greater gun restrictions. So I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, where I wasn't exposed to many Jewish people until I went to university. In fact, I think it's quite possible I didn't knowingly meet a Jewish person until I started exploring America after high school graduation, which I find funny now since the majority of my friends are Jewish. But, when I got to Sydney for the first time to attend University of New South Wales, I live next door to Bondi in Clovelly. I might as well have lived in Bondi, though, because that's where my friends were. I'd been adopted by several Jewish Aussies. It's where I had my first of many Shabbat dinners. It's where I enjoyed my first Seder. I still have Jewish friends there, ones I had to quickly text when I heard the news of the mass shooting on the 14th that killed 15 people on the beach, most of them Jewish people celebrating Hanukkah. There was another person killed. That was one of the shooters. I'm not going to count them here. My heart is shattered for the community, for my friends who were part of it, and this country. But that said, what I love about Australia is how the people here, most of us, confronted this horrific act with pleas to protect our multicultural identity. Listen, it's not a number I can say I didn't entirely make up here, but it really does seem like for every one person who has said something Islamophobic or xenophobic or just outright racist against immigrants, new Aussies, the typical othering bullshit that can happen here, for every one of those dickheads, it seems like there are at least a dozen screaming for the opposite. And I guess that's something. But the terror attack here isn't the only thing that's left me gutted since the last edition of 5 a.m. Real Talk. Director and actor Rob Reiner was murdered along with his wife, Michele. Their son, Nick, who has suffered from mental health issues and addiction since he was barely a teenager, is responsible. I don't want to spend too much time going on about the ins and outs of it. I already wrote an essay at the 5 a.m. Story Talk newsletter about the decline in cultural empathy in our world. You can read that by going to the show notes and finding the link there. But I hope we can all agree that the response to the murders by Donald Trump confirms, yet again, that the man is a psychopath and the cult that refuses to abandon him worship at the feet of a vile, disgusting human being I hope lives long enough to be properly punished for his myriad crimes, including how he's reduced America's standing in the world to the geopolitical equivalent of a rambling, incoherent, untreated schizophrenic shouting at passersby on the street. What happened to the Reiners is a tragedy, just a tragedy. Nick Reiner, who has struggled his entire life to somehow rise above his psychological issues and addiction, will be cared for and have to live with what he's done for the rest of his life, which will no doubt add to his tremendous pain. But I hope this startling, shocking event leads to even more discussion about why we should be investing more as Americans into mental health and addiction rather than letting so many troubled people potentially hurt themselves or others. Nick Reiner had people who had resources, who tried to help him, and sometimes even that's not enough. But we have to try. We have to. Okay, with a heavy heart, I'm going to do my best to focus on some gratitude here as 5 a.m. Story Talk wraps up its second season with this vlog. I won't be back until the end of January next year, though I expect a trailer will show up before that to tell you about the amazing lineup of guests I'm working on to hopefully take this podcast to the next level. Right now, I'd like to say thank you to you, my listeners, to you, my readers at the 5 a.m. Story Talk newsletter, to musician Carrie Brothers, who provides the music to this podcast, to my amazing guests during seasons 1 and 2 that were published this year. You challenged me. You made me laugh. You sometimes even made me cry. You wowed me with your art and your ideas and helped me make a little more sense of what's happening to us as a culture. And maybe you did the same for everyone listening and reading. I expect you did. Basically, I'm saying thank you to everyone who helped make this podcast so personally gratifying in 2025. I hope you stick around for what's coming your way in 2026. The world's only getting crazier, so it needs artists and art and people passionate about art to get us through it. Now, I'm going to close out with a quote and some thoughts on it, as I like to do when I wrap up these plogs. It's from Less Than Zero and American Psycho author Bret Easton Ellis. I write books to relieve myself of pain, he says. That's the prime motivator to write. So I think even a casual reader of the guy's work would say they can feel how true that is. But I actually want to use this quote to pivot back to Rob Reiner here, specifically to frame his work and its impact on us. Reiner was one of the most commercially and critically successful filmmakers of the last 20 years of the 20th century. He had a ridiculous run of 7 films, most of which could be called masterpieces. We're talking This Is Spinal Tap, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, and more. His work wasn't characterized by any specific style except amazingly good storytelling that moved us and changed us and, you could say, improved our lives. I really don't know how to explain how diverse his filmography is or explain how they all go together, except his name is attached to it. But if I had to try, I'd riff on that Bret Easton Ellis quote. Rob Reiner didn't make films to relieve himself of pain. He made films to relieve us, his audience, of pain, whether making us laugh or showing us how to be better people or inspiring us with fairy tales set in imaginary countries or the White House. You always knew you would feel better after watching one of his films, not because they were meaningless fluff just there to entertain you. They made you feel better because they were anything but that. He saw the world better than it probably ever will be. And he fought for decades, behind the camera and through political activism, to make it better. I'm so very, very grateful he walked this earth, that he became a filmmaker, and for the stories he told. His work will survive us all. Well, that's it for 2025, my friends. Be safe out there. Hug those closest to you. Revel in the tiny moments of joy that hopefully come your way during the tail end of this festive season. Happy holidays. See you soon, Story Talkers.